In learning about Gemara, today's daf is daf Chav Dalid, and we'll begin from Chav Gimel and Beis, the very bottom of the page. So we had a machlekes between Rameir and Chachamim. We had an argument regarding the status of an eved, of a slave, and the same thing applies to a wife. Everything belongs to a slave belongs to the master. Can you give something to a slave that the master should not have any control over? Same thing with a wife. According to the Rameir, you cannot. Ain't kinyan le'eved b'lei rabbi, and same thing by a woman. And the Chacham said, yes, of course you can. You can give her things, you can give the things and say on the condition that your husband or your master has no rights to. So you're going to say we find another argument which seems to be precisely the opposite or the converse of what we just learned. And it goes as follows. When it comes to Ma'aser Sheni, which is the first, second, fourth, and fifth year, the 10% that you have to bring to Yerushalayim, if it's too difficult to bring Yerushalayim, you can redeem it. Now, if you are the owner of the fruit, the Torah says you have to pay an extra fifth, it turns out to be a quarter of the value of the fruits when you change whatever the grains, whatever you bring. But if it's a stranger who is redeeming your teruah, then you just pay the accurate value and you don't have to add anything. So what happens if the wife is redeeming the husband's meiser, her own money? What happens then? That means it's possible that a wife has her own money. So let's see. Says the Gemara, the kasha for a kasha for Rabbanon, the Tanya in the Braisa, Ein Isha Poide Ma'aser Sheni. Right? All it says is that a woman cannot redeem Ma'aser Sheni. And we think right now we're talking about from her husband's property. And since she and her husband are like whatever she has belongs to the husband, so therefore when she redeems it, it's like the husband redeeming his own property. And therefore you have to add that extra fifth. Because it says in the pasuk, if somebody redeems Masroi, this is Masroi, because she and him, that's one opinion. But Abshimah ben Elazar, that that she could have her own money. It's exactly the opposite of what we learned before. But let's analyze this further. Hey Chidami, what are we talking about? There's a few possible scenarios. Which one are we talking about? Ilema bezuzah the Baal, it's the husband's money. Umaisa the Baal is the husband's too, and she's taking the husband's money to redeem it. Why would there then be any opinion that says you don't have to add a fifth? Shlichus the Baal of it. Isn't she doing the shlichus of her husband? Says the husband redeeming his own. The Ella bezuzah the da. We're talking about a case which is her own money. Now, how does he have her own money? The pashas, she either she yashined it. When a woman yashins, it belongs to her. But Rashi says nichs. Sorry. Or for marriage, but Rashi says nichse meloig, which is a big Kiddushin and Mefarshim have a hard time going into it. Because nichse meloig, the din is that the property belongs to her, and the dividends belong to the husband. And Rashi seems to say that if she uses her nichse meloig, the property is still mamish hers, so therefore it's her money. Okay, Vela bezuzi the da is her money, umas the day, but it's his tevuah. So the question is, how do we view her relationship with the husband? Ish Amar Achmana V'la Isha L'chayda. It says Ish, then she's L'chayda a total stranger. Why should she have to add if it's her own money? And it says Ish V'la Isha. According to the way we're learning right now, Pshat like Rashi, a man and not a woman doesn't mean a man, not a woman. It means a man, the owner, and not a stranger, Now, before we go any further, Taisus has a difficult time with that. So why say Ish V'la Isha? Just say Iba V'la Yacher. So what's going on here? So Taisus comes along with a big chiddush, and the Rambam actually passed in this way that the din of Ma'aser Sheni only applies to a man and not to a woman. Nothing to do with being a stranger or not. Even if it would be her own tevuah, if she would be paid, she's part of Ish Abarachman Isha. Why should that be? Because and in fact, we when it comes to the din of pediyah to redeem a woman and a man, same thing. And we have a pasuk, positive, even a woman. When it comes to adding a fifth, it only applies to a man. And Taisus explains why we need a special pasuk. Taisus says here, what's the whole idea of Ma'aser Sheni? Actually, Taisus Basta Chafal explains the more barichas. What's the whole idea of Ma'aser Sheni? We want you to go to Yerushalayim. Why do you want you to go to Yerushalayim? Because you bring all this money, all this food. You can't just eat it in 5 minutes. You have to hang around a week. While you're there, you're going to see the Kohanim doing their avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. You'll see people all clay kodesh. You're going to be so inspired, you will learn Torah. and you'll become much more frum. And we want you to hang around areas which will inspire you. Since a woman doesn't have the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, so we would have thought that women doesn't have the mitzvah. In fact, that's why maybe the Chemish she doesn't have. We don't have that incentive all that. But Padiyah, we need a special pasuk that she could. So bottom line is, going to be in time women are exempt. And according to Rashi, women are not exempt. It's just that she's considered a third party in relation to her husband's property. So what's going on here? So why is there an argument? This must be the case. The Akni law Achamona, somebody else gave her $100. Well, Amala said to her, I'm giving you the money in order for you to redeem the Meiser. Which before we had a Machlekes or Meyacham, if you can do that. And the reason why I'm unfortunately have a hard time with Rashi is because the law is if somebody gives a present to a wife, the dividends go to the husband and the item itself belongs to the wife. So this is Nichsim Eloig. And Rashi said before that's considered her money. According to everybody. So what's the problem? The goof is still hers. Not like an Ebed has nothing. Anyway, the Ivcha Shemano, we heard just exactly the opposite, where Rameir says that wife has no hand of her own. But Abaye Eifach, you're right. Change the names around. Don't change the names around. You know what we're talking about? It's her Maisa. She yashin it while she was married. Her father died, and he left behind Maisa Sheni. And she yashin the Maisa. She yashin the Maisa. And it's part of the state. And so now what is it? It's like nichsim malay, where the dividends go to the husband, the payers go to the husband. She gets she has the group itself, and things like this. There's an argument we'll have in Kiddushin later in other places if Meiser Sheni is considered Mom and Gavoya or Mom and Hedget. We'll learn later if a person takes the Meiser Sheni and gives it to a woman and says, you're Mekudesh to me, is she Mekudesh to me now? Rameir says Meiser Sheni is Mom and Gavoya. The moment you set it aside, it belongs to Hashem. And this, that you can eat it, Hashem Meshulchan Gavoya, because Hashem gave you the right to eat it. And according to Chacham, you know, Meiser Sheni is Mom and Hedget. So according to Rameir, since Meiser Sheni is Mom and Mom and Hegdish. Therefore, you don't pay that extra fifth. That's why he says the woman doesn't pay the extra fifth. Not because it's her money and she's a stranger to the husband. It's because this is the Eibishter's Maisa. We're talking about a case where she Yashin Maisa. Even though everything she Yashin, you know, the dividends go to the husband, but not the Maisa Sheni. That's Maisa, that's Hegdish. And therefore, since it doesn't belong to them, she Yashin the Maisa Sheni already in the status of Maisa Sheni. Therefore, you don't pay the extra fifth. The husband was never kind, so therefore you don't pay the extra 50. She wants to redeem it and just send money across. However, but they say it's mom and head and therefore the dividends go to the husband like any other part, like the rest of the Yerusha, and the group belongs to her. And therefore, since she's using, we're talking about a case, she's using the money of the husband. She's using the money of the husband, and the dividends belong to the husband. So it's the husband's fruits in a way. So therefore, he has at least part ownership in it, the dividends. And therefore, you have to add that extra bit. We're talking about it's the husband's money. We're talking about it's the husband, not her own money. It's the husband's money. Nothing to do with the case before. The husband's money. The Ma'aser Sheni she yashed in the status of Ma'aser Sheni. And the question is, do you have to add a fifth or not? And the question revolves around whether the Ma'aser Sheni belongs to them or belongs to the Eibishter. Totally unrelated to before. Because if you hold mom and head, then the husband is kind of the payers, so therefore and it's his money, so you're working with the husband. Therefore, you do have to add the fifth. Okay, the Mishnah says that one of the unique ways of an Eved Knani to leave his master versus an Eved Ibri. An Eved Ibri, if his eyes were gouged or blinded or his tooth was knocked out, he doesn't leave it, he gets compensated. Eved Knani, he's set free. And in fact, not just the Shen Ba'ayin, but also Tanu Lebraisa, Yoitzim Shen Ba'ayin, Viroshe Evarim. And also the tips of all the limbs are 24. She'enon chayzin. Only if it's irreversible. The damage that you did, it won't heal. Says the Gemara, okay, it says clearly in the Torah, if you knock out his eye, you knock out his tooth, okay, it says that clearly. El Rosh 24 Rosh no, how do you know that? Says the Gemara, Dumya the Shem V'ayin, because once you have Shem V'ayin, we compare the Shem V'ayin. What do we know about Shem V'ayin? Shem V'ayin movement shebegoli, they're obvious, they're revealed. The Einel Chayz, they cannot be cured. It cannot. Once you're blinded, you're blinded. Once your tooth is knocked out, it's knocked out. I've called movement shebegoli. So therefore, any movement which is revealed, the Einel Chayz, it cannot be cured. The din is what that you're set free. So it's all 24 Evodim. Says the Gemara. And the 24 Ivarim are the 10 fingers of your hand, the 10 fingers of your foot, the eye, the ear, and the male member. That's called Rosh Ivarim. Rosh Ivarim, the tips. Why we talk about Rosh Ivarim is because when it comes to a nega, if you have a nega on your skin anywhere, it's haras, you have leprosy, you have all the laws of leprosy. But if it's at the tip of an aver, where if you look on one side, you cannot see the leprosy of the other side because it straddles both sides, and you don't become tameh. So that's a Rosh Evarim. You have to be able to see, the kohen has to see the entire leprosy with one look. So that's where Rosh Evarim comes in. Tips of the Evarim. Says the Gemara, okay, how do you want to go ahead and extrapolate from Shan Va'ayin that 24 limbs in total? When have a rule, whenever the Torah repeats the same halacha twice, according to except Rabbi Yehuda, when you have two psukim, it comes to tell you that what? That's only limited to these two. These are two exceptions. Everywhere else is different. They when have a Shan Va'ayin kishnei two psukim are really repeating itself. You can't live with it. So Gemara tzricha, we need it. No. When do we say that it's two psukim if it's totally unnecessary? So why did the Torah repeat it? To limit it to these two. But over here it was necessary. Because if the Torah would have told us only one, either the tooth or the eye, we would not have known the other. And why is that as follows? If the Torah would have told us, you knock out the evidence tooth, he set free. I would have thought, even an infant, the first teeth that they have, it gets replaced. After it falls out, it gets replaced. I would have thought it doesn't matter. If you knock out the 3-year-old kid's tooth, you should be set free. Therefore, it says eye. Because of Rachmana ayin, if it would have said I would have thought you were born with it. Of course, any other limb that's similar to an eye, you're born with. Knock it out. You're okay, fine. When it comes to a tooth, Lord knows. What I don't understand is why the Gemara doesn't say better. If it would have said the only tooth, I would have thought a tooth you knock out, the whole tooth comes out of the mouth. But an eye, even if I blind you, the eye is still there. So who said that you become that you go free? I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll see more later. We'll talk about a tooth. We have to actually knock it out, or even we just loosen it completely. Something about I'm saying that you're blind as that. But we'll see later if you gouge his eye as well. If we need both. Okay, so once you need both, we can compare others to it. Talking about the Ema, let us say we have a concept of a klal and a prat. A klal is all inclusive, comes along a prat, and limits the klal only in this particular case, which is similar to the prat. So it says in the pasuk, ki yak, if you strike the eye of your eved, is a klal, and then it says the eye or the tooth. So shen va'ayin is a prat. Let's say klal u prat, and let's limit it only to the shen and eye, the tooth and the eye. So let's say pra'in b'chlal ein b'chlal mashum prat shen va'ayni mirchiloi. No. So the Gemara lachofshi yishalchenu. The pasuk then continues, set him free. It says that by an eye, it says that by a tooth, set him free. Chazar v'kolom. You tell you should set him free. Is again all inclusive in all instances. Klal prat klal yet don't get a prat. So we expand it. It has to be similar to the prat. And what do we know about the prat? Ma prat mefudish mum shebegali. What do we know about the prat? These are examples of a revealed mum. The ein on chayzin, they don't come, they cannot reheal. Av kol mum shebegali ve'ein on chayzin. Now let's understand for a second. A tooth, we can see the tooth now is loose, it's dangling or it fell out. But an eye, if it makes someone blind, how can you tell that he's blind? How is that a mum shebegali? He wears a patch on the eye. If he doesn't wear a patch on the eye, how can you tell it's a mum shebegali? So one way of learning is the eye itself is begoli. So we need that the avid to be begoli, not that the wound should be begoli, but the limb should be begoli. The eye is begoli. Another way of learning is if somebody is blind, it's very easy to tell. I mean, they stumble all the time. So therefore, it's considered a mum. The mum also is begoli. Okay, the Gemara continues. Let's continue to analyze the prat. The prat mefurish mumish begoli is revealed, but a bottom malachta, he can no longer perform his service if he's blind. Get healed, and the eye can no longer function as an eye, or a tooth. It can no longer function as a tooth. You can't chew. You can't do anything with that tooth. Alama Tanya, why did we learn if tolash beziknoi? If you went ahead and you pulled somebody's beard, the dildul by etzem. If you went ahead and you pulled somebody's beard, and the bone by the tooth, by the jaw, suddenly became very, very loose, and it fell out of place, and you can write it with toe because the whole mouth is not aligned anymore. Is Eved Yaitz goes free because he cannot go back to his place, and then what happened? The bone, Raja, the bone will dry and eventually fall out. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's talking about the jaw itself. What bone would be to fall out of your mouth? And what bones are near your beard? It must be the jaw. And interesting, you call the bone that's protected, that's covered by the beard, the mum shabagoli. Here, you can't say what we said before. Beard masks it. So it has to be somewhere a little bit, it must be the jaw. So a little bit higher. Ribuy, it's a ribuy. Yeah. So my answer is lachedis, lachavshi shachenu. Forget what we said before. Remember, we had a machlekes. Sometimes you learn klal prat. So here we're going to use the method of ribuy. This brisa holds you use the method of ribuy with ribuy. Ribuy adds far more. Though the first brisa says klal prat klal, it has to be exactly 24 liters. This brisa although be expanded much further. So ribuy with ribuy, and therefore even a bone in the thing is included. So what is excluded then? If I hit you on your hand with some sun, your hand shriveled up, even though it will heal Nami, it should be included because the Dibi remember everything. Allah Batani, you call Yod, you hit him on the hand with some sun and shriveled up, does not go free. In Hilchos Shabbos, we say that if you hit somebody in the hand, a lot of them Machal Shabbos because it's considered internal bleeding and so on and so forth. But I guess that's some of the case where maybe it won't be healed or it's dangerous. Here, whatever they eventually heal by itself. Oh, why did Torah mention Shema'ayin at all? So therefore, must comes to exclude something. Okay. Anyway, further, isn't all going back to the first, but I said 24 it goes free. The tzaddik gets shich, but he also still needs, in order to become a full-fledged yid, there's two parts here. One is his freedom from his master, the other one is to become a full-fledged yid. He still needs to get shich. Divrei Rab Shimon. Those are the words of Rab Shimon. Meir says, "Ain't tzaddik. You don't need to get shikha. The Torah sets you free." Rabbi Lezer ain't tzaddik. Rabbi Tafra ain't tzaddik. Rabbi Kiva ain't tzaddik. It must have been a pretty rowdy, robust conversation I had over there. Hamachriim lifnei chachamim. Those who want to make some kind of a peace over here, a compromise, need in divrei Rabbi Tafra b'shen ba'ayin. When it comes to shen ba'ayin, which is written clearly in the Torah, will agree. You don't need to get shikha. Shatayda zachsalot. Torah said you're set free. And Divrei Rabbi Kiva b'shari bar. The words of Rabbi Kiva, all other avodim that you do need to get shikha. And what's the logic behind that? Hoyil the kanas chachamim, because it's a knas of the chachamim. You have to set the ebed free. Says the Gemara, knasu kroi Kiddushin. We live for klal, but the klal it comes to include. It's one of the methods of learning Torah. How many didn't we learn for Torah this way? Since it's not a Furish in Torah, it's only Medrash Chachamim, and therefore, because it's a Medrash Chachamim, therefore we decided that you need to get Shich. It's not clear in the Torah. So anyway, my time with the Rab Shimon. What's this photo of Rab Shimon that says that what you still need to get Shich? Yalif shiluach meisha. He learns out shiluach from a woman. Ma isha b'shtar. We find the word shiluach by a woman. And you find here the word yishalchenu. So we make a gzer shava. Ma'isha b'shtar, a woman you still need to get, even after you send her out of the house, you still need to get. Eved nami b'shtar, and Eved also needs to start. No, and Rab Meir, who says you don't need, why not? Because of chavshi l'b'sayif. If it would have said, shalchenu chavshi, you're right. You'll learn from Isha. You need to get. Kinikabri hasha the cost of la chavshi shachani. He's already free before you even send him. But the chavshi me'ikara, your chavshi beginning. Taisa doesn't like the Rashi Pshat that Medrash Chachamim means you learn from a drash instead of thing from Torah. Taisa says, how many mitzvahs do we have that we learn from a drash rather than the footage in the Torah? So he says Rabbeinu Tam learns Medrash means that the only reason why you need to get by these things is Medrash Chachamim. What do you mean? Shen v'ayin is clearly in the Torah. Everybody knows the Torah. Not everyone knows the Gemara. If they see this evidence in the street and they don't know that if you knock out, break his hand or whatever it is, finger, that he's set free, and they'll walk around accusing him of being an Eved. He can marry this guy, he's still an Eved, and so on. So he gets shikha. So because it's only a Medrash HaChamim, and people are not familiar with this halacha, so therefore the Chacham say, we'll make a get. So Machlekes and Achreinim, what's Pshat and Taisus? Is the Pshat that everyone knows Taisus Shav? Or is the Pshat that Taisus Shav, we don't care if they know or they don't know. This is the Torah says you follow the Torah. Okay. Taking one further, or others say the pshat is Shem Ayin is written in the Torah, so you go free. The rest, I know other Shimon said you learn the rest because it says Lachafshi Shachenu. The word is Shachenu. Shachenu. Shabbat Yisha. There you need to get. Tell you what further. Tell me what you learned. You can't let you hit him in the eye, the sinma, and you blinded him. Allah, then you hit him in the ear, and he became deaf. Now, again, why come we should go? Because the ear is visible, or because you can tell somebody can't hear. Evidence going to say this. Connected Einoi, you bang the wall next to his eye. The Einoi you can no longer see because he out of fear. He had, fear trauma can cause all kinds of. I just know somebody a few days ago who heard heard a few weeks ago, her father passed away. She became deaf in one ear. The doctors don't know how to cure it. Purely from trauma. Connected Oznoi, you bang the wall next to the ear, the English Shemaya. Can't hear. Ain't never does not go free. Why not? Why not? Okay, remember, are you trying to tell me the call of Kluma? If I screamed and I shouted and I scared you, it's not considered the damage. What Tanya Rama by Yecheskel learned, he said that Tanago Tanago stuck his head into the inside a glass in the chute of a glass beacon, glass, jug. The Takaboy began to scream, Vishaber, and broke the glass jug. Is Mishalom Nether Shalom? You pay the full nezing. Now there's a machlekes. We're going to learn Baba Kama, the next step actually. For animal, the first 3 times you pay chatzin nezing by keren when it comes to the horns. Shen by regel and shen regel you pay full nezing. Then we have a concept of Yom Beis called chatzin nezek traders. If the animal is walking and pebbles go flying, so it's not directly from the animal; it's the animal causing things. So there's a machlekes whether Sumcha says you pay full nezek, and the Chacham say you pay only halacha. You pay only a half a nezik. So we have 2 brises here. One follows Sumchas, one follows the other one. So this is, again, he shouted, it's like the teeth, like the pebbles. It's not like he physically broke it. You paint which means this follows the view of Sumchas, that Nezik, you also pay for amount. And another, for example, Susha, son of a Chamash, they made their noises, they neighed, they brayed. Mishabra came with the rabbis and they broke kalim inside the house from the noises. Misham chatzinezik. This part of the view of the chacham is chatzinezik. So we see clearly that sound it can break. His opera singers they can break glass chandeliers. Amle shiny other a person is different. The kivan the bardasu iu mivis nafshay. When the guy hits you, okay, it's one thing. It's a full photo of the guy. When the guy shouts, it's like your decision that you're going to allow the trauma to affect you. Very interesting. So you have control, and you should exercise that control. So therefore, what does that do? It removes it distances that person to cause this damage one more step, and you're only a grama now. Grama benezik in his pocket. If you actually cause the damage is one thing, but if you make the damage is one thing, but if you cause the damage, and that interesting. In other words, this whole idea of psychology, the Gemara is saying here is a person at the end of the day does have some control, and they can how they are going to allow external events affect them. Very interesting. Says the Gemara further. If you frighten your friend and he has all kinds of psychological problems in a court of law, there's no compensation. So Medina Shemaim be a mensch. Kate, I talk about you blew in his ear, he made him deaf. You frightened him, your pot, if you grabbed a hold of him, talk about then you shout in his ear. So he had no control. Then the Charosha Chayiv, he made deaf your Chayiv. So I learned. He called and he hit him in the eye because the eye became dim, but he can still see. Al-Shin and his tooth. Then we start to wiggle. If we can still have use of that tooth of the eye, even though it diminished his eyesight, ain't ever is not set free. But if you can no longer use it, then ever he does go free. Tanya that we learned elsewhere had a shahois if he'd already had poor eyesight this summer, be blind him completely. Shinadud, you already had a wiggly tooth, he pila, and you knocked it out. Im yochel if you can use them as eved yitzim and then the eved It could have used you reduced eyesight, but you can still see, even peripheral vision, you can still cross the streets. I mean, you had use of it. Now you blinded him completely. Okay, he's free. Or the tooth, he could have used two things which are soft, and now he can't even do that. Then you're free. But Lav, if he had no use of them already before, then you did nothing. With tzricha, the principle is the same. That you take something and you make it useless. Tzricha. The Yeshmin Hakama is the first case where you diminish his eyesight. I would say, you know why? You should be cut on the body of Hashna and you tell me that what he is set free. I would say, sorry. If you diminish his eye, cannot use it anymore. I would say, because he took a guy with good eyesight and you made it very, very weak and can't be used. In the case where you could hardly see, why should you go free? The Yashmin completely binded, has no use anymore. He still has some use. Maybe not. If we need both cases, yeah. We learned. What about if there was no intention? There's two things there. Did he intend to do the eye? Did he intend to damage the eye? Do you need both intents? What happens if he's planning to move something from his nose, and then by mistake the hand went up to the eye? So there's two things there. He had no intention for the eye, plus he had no intention to harm it. Or the fact that he had no intention to harm is good enough, even though he intention to hit the eye. So he's like this. The master was a doctor. Why don't you put some salve in my eye? So he intended to work with the eye, but the mistake he blinded him. I want you to clean my tooth, scrape my tooth, whatever it is, and then he pila, and he knocked the tooth out. He's he was playing with the other. He used it as a ruse. Really, the yotze goes free. So Tanakama holds because the guy intended to work with the eye, even though it was unintentional to cause any damage. That's enough to send free. The Bach says no. V'shichasa. The Bach says no. If he had no intention of harming him, he doesn't go free. But what about if he had intention, no intention at all to blind the person? He put his hand in the what do you call it? He put his hand inside the mother's womb to move to work with the embryo. And by mistake he blinded. So not only he had no intention of harming and no intention of even dealing with the eye. Potter. My timer. I'm a crop of shichas. So you have to in mind when shichas are not to harm, but at least to work with that particular limb. Wieder with shichas could have said vishichas. Shichas and after. Wieder shichas doesn't dash it. Does the Gemara? What happens if he's already blind? But the chatota, I gouged his eye. Ever ever goes free. My time, a wife. The chusad eberu. Now you remove the limb. So before you blinded him, it's like it's a mumshib gola, as we explained before. Now you completely removed his eye from the socket. So now you removed his limb. With Tana Tuna, we actually learned something similar. So by a tooth, for example, we said before that if you knock the tooth out, if let's say you can hardly use a tooth. In fact, you couldn't use a tooth, and then you knock it out, he doesn't go free. Why not? Now it's mechusar ever. It's like the eye. He was blind before, and you gouge the eye. We say he goes free because mechusar ever. What about a tooth? So some of the Shainim say a tooth is not called an aver. And I guess because you weren't born with it. It came afterwards, so it's not considered an aver at all. Tana Tuna, we learned the Bryce supporting this. Tam was by an animal is very important to make sure there's unblemished when you want to bring it as a carbon. But Tam was when it comes to bird, we don't care. Yochol, Yovshik Gapel, let's say the wings completely dried up. Nikta Ragla, the legs are missing. Nechta Eino, the eyes are missing. Tamalayma Mina, it's missing an aver. Can you still bring that bird? Tamalayma Mina, not all birds, some. Like color, not every bird. The bird is missing an aver, you cannot bring it up. So we see clearly from here that gouging the eye is considered taking away an aver. And the big machlek is a poskim based on this Gemara here. Or they talk about it. What happens if what do you call it? If a person's hand is paralyzed, the left hand, can he put on tefillin on that hand? We say that it's completely because it says here yof shagapa. Doesn't say that the wings fell off. It dried up or shriveled up. We say it's considered as if the aver is missing. So if a person's left hand, let's say, is immobile, can you put filling on that hand? Is it considered as if it's missing the aver or not? And they want to draw simile, others say you cannot draw simile, and so on. And the argument is very interesting. Citizen Tanya talks about it that whether the wings of a chicken are just an accessory, or they're actually pivotal to the strength of the bird itself. So some Acharei want to say that it's the wings are the most important part of the bird, and therefore if it shows up, it's useless. But a hand, you can live without a hand, that one hand. So therefore, life goes on. So maybe it's different. Others say no, it's the feet of the bird that's the most important part. The wings are just an accessory, help the bird fly. A little bit further, he had an extra finger, and he cut it off. He had 6 fingers, let's say, the Eved. Does he go free or not? Eved Yechid goes free. When do we say that he had an extra finger and you cut it off? It's considered a blemish. If you looked at the hand, it wasn't abutting some other part of the hand. It looked like another finger on the hand. So only had 6 fingers. Then it's considered part of the hand, and for this person, it's a mum. But if it was out of place, then it's not considered a mum. See you tomorrow, Mr. Shem. Have a good day.